What's up everybody? Welcome back to Make It and Break It. My name's Andrew and I would normally try and think of a really cool intro and then throw it away on the cutting room floor later, but I don't have time because there's a bike show in a month that I want to ride this bike to because I don't have entry into it, but it's a really cool bike show and I want to get this bike there, which means I have a lot of work to do. So we've got to finish both foot control sets, figure out all of our custom parts, and get those to a machine shop because machine shops take forever, and if they don't take forever they cost a ton of money. If you go to like an online site or something like that, something like this piece here would cost $1,000 to get shipped before the end of January, which is like 3 weeks from now. So we have to get going because I have to be smart about it. So without too long a preamble, I'm gonna walk you through what we're trying to solve with our foot controls here, and hopefully then we'll get to a better design in the end. So we're gonna switch positions. I'm gonna get the butt. Actually, we're gonna switch positions on you, get you in closer here, so I can show you kind of the things that we're working on with the right side controls, and then we'll go look at the left side. All right. So we're here with our right side. This is our V1 assembly. This is basically just a fitment check assembly, concept check assembly, and it worked for some things and it didn't really work for a lot of other things. So doing this, what we realized is that this brake positioning, even if we could put it in this position, would be terrible because we'd start running into exhaust issues and a bunch of other problems with trying to mount this thing, kind of how we were planning with it, just down another couple inches, which is fine because we also kind of figured out that we wanted to move the brake pedal and get it away from mounting it around your foot peg here. So on sport bikes and street bikes, mounting your brake pedal, pivoting around your foot peg is a pretty normal thing. On dirt bikes, the foot pegs are a lot different. They're a lot beefier and not really set up most of the times to have a brake pedal pivot around this. Instead, they have this brake pedal located somewhere up in here, and then this pedal will be here, and this pedal will be a much stronger and sturdier pedal. Now, I've already ordered the pivot pegs I talked about in the last video for this thing. I've already ordered the pivot pegs, although I don't have all the numbers I need for that one yet. But I've already ordered pivot pegs for this, and pivot pegs are not compatible with this style of brake lever. So we are going to have to remote mount our brake lever somewhere up here, which is fine because that's a lot better like that for our mount here. So I have been thinking about this brake pedal or this brake master cylinder the wrong way. So I've been thinking of trying to mount it like the stock unit, which I'll get it and show you how it kind of mounts. Ugh. This is a very confined seating position. So the stock pedal, or the stock thing, mounts like this. So you're looking at it and it mounts on the front, and then you have a bolt that threads through to the back, and this stuff all hooks up and everything's all hunky-dory, right? And that's generally fine for a sport bike and everything else, and the clearances are all good and everything. But when you're trying to use this same master cylinder and hosing and everything else, because I don't have enough time to figure out hosing and replace it, you got to think a little bit outside of the box. So I had been ideally positioning this thing so that it would mount, the brake master cylinder would mount on the same sort of front area like it has, like it was designed originally. But I've been thinking about that wrong, and how you actually want to mount this thing, especially since we're going to a remote pedal setup as opposed to a orbital pedal setup. So especially since our pedal's going from here to kind of wherever we need it to go now, we can actually have a lot more freedom of where we mount this this master cylinder. So instead of mounting it, you know, vertically down a couple inches from here, we're actually going to mount it pretty much like that. So maybe out here a little bit more just to get ourselves a little bit more clearance. But yeah, we're going to end up mounting it in the vertical position right here, and essentially having it mount even or in front of our pedal. So hopefully that's all coming through on the video. So instead of mounting behind or on top like this, it's actually going to mount behind like this, behind a piece of metal here, and it's going to mount pretty close to its position right now, up here somewhere. See if we can't get it somewhere in here without kinking the hoses too badly. But that's kind of the idea where we'll go position things, and then we can position our brake pedal where we want it to go based on that. So that's our biggest hurdle here, and then it's designing a brake pedal that won't interfere with our foots, as well as up here on the oil cooler water. The oil to water, this is kind of where the oil gets cooled, and it gets cooled by interfacing with the regular coolant. So that's this little jacket here. So we don't want to hit that either, because that was the other problem with our brake pedal. This original one that's kind of designed on the original stock one, it was running up on this bolt. So we're going to have to design it to come down here and around and come in some, and avoid this this area so we don't get our feet caught on this thing when we're trying to ride around. Now let's go swap over the other side. It's not in the greatest position, but I'll try and get you guys the best view and show you what we're dealing with over there. Alright, so I'm going to straddle over here so I can show you with my foot where there's some problems. This is our left side. This is the shifter side typically. And right now what's installed is just the whole fitment, because I didn't produce a first time prototype on this side yet, because I wanted to make sure I liked how everything worked on the brake side first, because this side's maybe a little bit easier to deal with. But you can see right here, and I'll stand it up here, it sits pretty good, and I actually like the way it sits here. But we have a couple issues. First, this is the shifter, and the shifter is a very weird design that I'm gonna have to basically throw out. But this thing needs to be relocated, and essentially there are no kits out there that relocate this, so we're gonna have to custom make this ourselves. But the actuator that comes up here comes through the frame and is basically attached to the shift lever. There's a lot we're gonna have to do with this, because we're essentially gonna have to do with the brake pedal. So this one, in this design, the shift pedal was here, and your foot pedal was like basically right up here somewhere. It basically was just a couple inches. It was like an inch, half an inch below where your foot normally was. So we're gonna have to basically redesign this to also be a remote upper sort of shift location. And I think we might have to do this while leaving most of this regular rod in place. We might be able to go find an aftermarket shorter rod to maybe make our design a little bit easier, because this sort of distance, we have a lot of distances and motion ratios we want to keep the same if we want the shifter feel to be nice. And then we also have to get foot pegs and toe pegs and everything else set up. The other thing, and this is a bigger problem, that's stuff we kind of expect when we're doing this. The other problem is the kickstand. So I'm gonna kick this up here with my hand. You see how it's resting right here on the bottom of our assembly? Yeah, that's not good. Let me check. I'm gonna turn it on here. It's hard to tell because I don't have a kickstand light on this bike, but normally this thing is about halfway through this major barrel here. So we may have to get creative with how we set our foot pegs, which might change how we do our foot pegs on our right side, on that side over there. Because if we have to set these out farther for some reason or another, then the other ones have to get set out farther so we have a relatively even weight distribution across the bike. And that'll make our bike super wide. And that'll look really weird. But that's something we're gonna have to come through here in this episode. But that'll be a lot easier when we take out and put our real prototype in, our real like version 1 form prototype, because then we'll understand how much we actually have to do to clear the kickstand, because the kickstands are nice to have so the bike stands up when you don't want to stand on it. So that's our problem. Okay, so we got our first one in here, and let's go over the good things and the bad things. So what we've got right here is our first, what I would call actually very successful prototype. Some of the clearances are still a little off, but it's not bad. You can see kind of how we have this set up here now. We have the master cylinder here mounting behind instead of in front like on the old Rearsets. And that actually clears a lot better. We have a lot more clearance back here behind towards the swing arm. So I'm not really worried about a collision there anymore. If we'd have mounted everything like I had it, that collision could have been bad. I managed and accidentally managed to make these holes perfect size so that these bolts, the normal mounting bolts, actually thread into them a little bit, which is hilarious. So now I can actually mount everything there and it all stays pretty rigid. And you kind of see this whole setup actually ends up about where I want it. So this is where the brake pedal actually fits. And I was messing around. No, it's up there. I was messing around with our little brake pedal here, and actually with this setup, the way it is, this clearance and this offset is pretty much perfect. Everything seems to fit except for the distance between angles and dangles. The distance between this hole and this hole is a little bit short on to reach where this hole currently is, and I think that's because I changed this offset distance. This was like 0.91 inches, and now it's this distance here was 0.91 here on this, and now I designed this one with like a 1.0 inches, or so like an actual 1 inch offset. So I need to go readjust how this thing's set up a little bit, but it means that we're not that far off from getting a foot pedal that might work. Couple things to note, but this transition area at the bottom here, as well as on the back side, is very abrupt, and it's abrupt in a way that I don't like, because it creates stress risers and places where things could break in a crash. And fortunately or unfortunately, this bike's going to go down. It's going off-road, so you need to be able to be comfortable in your equipment's ability to handle a crash. That means we need to do some minor adjustments here. So this upper mounting bolt, it's currently set up in a configuration where this whole plane is the same thickness, and I think that's going to change. I think what we're going to do is we're going to have a plane that's about 1/2 inch, so it starts here at 1/2 inch and goes all the way up to this height here, and then we just drill a hole into it, and that'll give us a lot more. It hopefully might give us more webbing and area up here to continue this, make this part less breakable, because I have a suspicion this part will break off of the piece right here if in a crash. And I'm also going to take that same methodology and extend it from here to here. And then I was looking at these pieces down here and the connection pieces, and while it works fine for clearance, this this configuration here, I don't think is going to be good for stresses. So we're going to make this a little bit more of a smooth transition between the two mounting bolts here and here, so that this part doesn't necessarily feel like it sticks out so much, and also so that these corners are much more rounded and a much more smooth transition, so we don't get any weird stress risers in these corners here. Now these are rounded by the CAD model, but really that's not this is not an ideal configuration for something that's going to carry a lot of stress, and this has to hold me up, so obviously it's going to have a lot of stress. So we're going to go get version 2 of this printed up. The awesome part about 3D printing, and this is a really cool thing, is this whole piece was about a 3.5 hour print, and it's functional enough for me to test fit like this. I wouldn't want to stand on this, obviously. This is just a PLA print with only 2 layers, but it's functional enough for me to test like this. And at the end of the day, I was looking at some rush order CNC jobs. A like 7 business day turnaround on our previous, on something like this, which is comes out of a bigger block of metal, but is I mean thicker block of metal, so I have to come out of a block of metal that's much thicker, was like $1,300 and 10-day turnaround, where this is, I don't know, $5 and a 3-hour turnaround. So this shows you what you can do with a 3D printer and help you with your development process and help you streamline some of that development. So so I'm gonna go back in, make those adjustments that I showed you, and maybe also have a brake pedal available so that we can test brake pedal configuration here and see what sort of clearances we actually need. So I'll make a guess at it, and then we'll go bring that back. Okay, so we're back, and we just got our new pieces off of the printer. So we're gonna throw them on here and see what we think. Let's see, this one goes on next. All right, and this is kind of what we're looking at right now, and this is actually pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this result. There are a couple things though. First, I want to show you kind of how I solved this. So I actually added in a, instead of this just being a straight, you know, hard edge right here, I actually added in a whole extra bit here and here, and on the back side back here. And that'll give a bit more of a transition. And it will also, I hope, act as kind of like an impact and a brush protector for the master cylinder. So the idea here is this actually sticks out a little bit from the frame. So if anything hits, this will hit on this backside before this frame will hit. So that'll save the frame from a couple scratches and things like that. But also, anything coming along this way that might glance off the master cylinder here will actually go ahead and hit the mount first. I mean, that's not going to happen too often because my foot's going to be right here, but that is something, that's why I wanted to do it this way and add a couple of these things, just so everything glances off this stuff a little bit better and we get a little bit more protection for our master cylinder. Now, I will probably add like a sheet metal or like a small little plate, screw it in here and here, and then like have it come over here to protect the front side of this from like an impact of some sort from like a rock or something like that. But for now, this provides a lot of good solid protection there. First thing I noticed is that right here, this mounting bolt, this lower mounting bolt, it's actually contacting our brake pedal here, which is not ideal, right? What that means is, and there's two reasons for that. One, I have this brake pedal designed like the old one, and the old one, not only did it pivot around like somewhere around here, it was also set off from the piece. And this new brake pedal will not be set off like that. It'll just be screwed in basically right here, on a carriage bolt or on a pivot bolt like this one is. But what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to actually have to offset this arm, this lever arm, farther out. And that's going to let me clear this bolt here. The other thing I noticed, and it's something I didn't pay attention to initially, but now that I was looking at this, is that I don't actually have any countersink for these bolt heads. And the old mount did, but this new one doesn't. Well, it does up here, but it's not here. So what I'm losing actually 2 threads of engagement, where it threads into the frame mounts here. So I'm gonna go in and add those, and then get this adjusted, and that should take care of that. The final thing is we're over here is where our brake pedal, I forgot to put it in the model unfortunately, where our brake pedal is actually supposed to sit right about here, or at least that was the original idea. So I brought out my boot here to just kind of set it up, and looking at it, about where it's gonna sit, that seems pretty good, especially since the pedal assembly is gonna stick out some amount here from a mount that I have to go make, and then it's going to mount somewhere out here, and it's a big pedal assembly. So that's plenty of space between my boot and this pedal, so I'm not gonna get caught on that. And it looks like there's plenty of clearance up here on all of this stuff, and that'll just improve as we move this out. I do need to change this design a little bit. These sharp edges I'm not super fan of in general. They just tend to catch things, and you don't want to do that when you're riding off-road. So I will try and smooth this out some, and smooth out all of these edges and transitions. And then I do have to create a mount here. So I'm going to create a dummy mount for now. Because the new foot pegs are going to come in. I actually ordered pivot pegs, and I'm going to have to figure out how those mount and then make an adapter mount for this. So working on how to do that right now. But for this one, I'm just going to go print a new one, and it's just going to be kind of a dummy, so we can get a full view of the assembly. And we'll print a new brake pedal for what I think will work. It looks like I like about where this brake pedal sits. It sits, so this is about where my boot would be, about where I'd be standing typically, if I'm not like standing up on my toes over here. But if I'm standing like right on the pedal, give or take there, it looks like it'll be right under my toe. And there's a bunch of adjustment here at the brake master cylinder, so I can adjust it up and down. And you can almost see that it would work like this, assuming this wasn't grinding. But if I do this, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but it actually bends the mount up here because this is all just plastic, and the stiffness in here is higher than this, so I can't actually actuate the brakes with the plastic as it currently sits. If I made this thicker, I probably could, or if I printed more infill, but these are just temp prototype parts, so I'm not printing with any sort of infill for strength. So I'm gonna go actually finish those last pieces, update this, and get a dummy mount in here that I think will work. And I'm also going to get the left side with the clutch setup, the clutch side or the left side. I'm gonna go get a mount like this, or similar to this, sketched up over there, and get that printed so we can check both of those at the same time. All right. So this is, I think, pretty close. Probably the last 3D model I'll print, although I might have to print one more anyway, just because I might have to make some adjustments on the left side. But on this right side, we're pretty close to there. So I've got a dummy foot peg in. I think the foot peg will actually mount farther out, so I'm going to have a little bit more space with my foot to move around and stuff like that. But looks like there's plenty of clearance, and I did go sit on this and move around. I didn't feel any like knocking into the clutch or any of these lines or anything. So that seemed good. This new thing already clears the bolts before the countersink I put in here. So that countersink will be, you know, icing on the cake. Obviously, this thing moves around a bunch. There's a bunch of space. This is not designed for this bolt. It's designed for a different pivot bolt. So those will hopefully come in a day or two, and I might be able to test that out. Right now, the clearances are all wrong on this stuff for this stuff to fit properly. So that's where a lot of this movement is. Although with this being this close to the water line here, I may end up moving it out a little bit more just to make sure I don't hit any of the coolant stuff. Oh, this one really won't go up this far. I think it's going to be fine where it is. I may just move it out a smidge more and start this bend maybe a little earlier, so I have just a little bit more clearance to these cover bolts here for this cooling adapter. But this is pretty much it. I think we're pretty much done with our right-hand side, with our brake side. Our brake pedal looks pretty good. Everything seems to line up pretty well. There will always be something, so when we get it in metal, we'll figure out where we're actually missing some stuff. But for right now, this looks good. So I'm gonna go throw the other side on real quick and see how that looks. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about that fit up. The actual fitting of it is pretty good. I probably am gonna have to move the overflow bottle, the coolant bottle back there, to maybe a slightly higher location, just to give myself a little bit more room for the shift lever. And I think the shift lever might want to come over just a little bit more as well. But this is for a first fit, that's not terrible. We did run into a few issues again with the kickstand. So I actually ended up pulling the kickstand off because I may or may not reuse some of these parts, but I don't need all of them. But essentially what was happening is the kickstand is sitting right here, right? And when everything's down, it's actually really good. Everything fits, everything's nice, there's a lot of clearance. But the problem is when it was up, the mount here was right about here, which was fine for clearance to the stand itself. The problem was this spring that I tore off, broke it, was coming up here and hitting on the bottom of our mount. And in order to clear the spring, you know, we would have to essentially push this mount out another 1.25 inches, I think. And I'm already a little concerned about how wide this thing's gonna be with the pivot pegs that I ordered on them. So I don't really wanna have to push everything out another 1.5 inches-ish, because then I'd have to do the same thing on the other side, otherwise my weight's not gonna be even, the bike won't handle properly. So I don't want to push out that far. So what'll happen is we'll fix this kickstand interference issue later. I would love to use the original kickstand minus the sensor, which I don't know if I can get off, but I might just create a new mount real quick that's based off of this one, and then has the spring mounts that I would like, so that it doesn't interfere with my foot control location. So that's kind of what I think we're looking at for this right now. But otherwise, these two, where's that bolt that puts the things on the things? the actual fit up went pretty well. The arm for this, so this is the shift arm up here. So if you're looking at the left side of the motorcycle, you'll be looking straight on like this. And this shift arm ended up being about where I thought it would for making the connection to the shifter cable. So this shift arm is about where I thought it would, which is nice. It just means we'll have to figure out our offsets and other things when we get our second bushing and a new shifter linkage. Because I don't think I'm going to cut that one down. I think I'm just going to use a new one that I ordered that's a lot shorter. So that one ended up at about the right spot. This was not terrible positioning for the shifter. I didn't love it, to be fair. I think it could move this way, move out another ½ of an inch or so. I'm not sold on the position of it for shifting yet. So I think I'm going to print another one here, make the adjustments over here, and then remount everything and see how I like it then. And in doing so, I can fix the thing that I screwed up, which is my foot pegs. So this was supposed to be a stand-in foot peg, which is offset about where I thought the actual foot pegs are going to get offset. But I didn't. I made the stupid rookie mistake of not thinking about how I was going to fasten them. I was like, oh yeah, this fastened just fine the last time, but it fastened on this design, which just had a locating pin here, as opposed to what we're using now, which is bolting into our basically interference fit mock-ups here. So that was not the best. So we're gonna fix this and get a real one of these made so that I can actually use it like I intended to use it. And then we'll do our final fit up here. Hopefully that doesn't take too long, because I'd love to get this video out relatively soon. So we'll get those pieces, and I think I'll reprint this brake pedal one more time because I want to try one more position. And then I think that'll be it for the day. All right, and our last set of pedals here is printing, plus our newly updated, maybe correct foot pedal. So, and that'll take us another 8 hours. Awesome. A lot faster than getting it from a machine shop though. And with 8 hours left, I think we're gonna call it here for this video, guys. I will update you in the future when we get our final forms and stuff like that. You will see those, and you'll probably see them in metal hopefully soon here, because I have a month to finish this thing before I want to go down to a motorcycle show in Portland. And it would be really cool to take HyperTenere version 1.5 down there with crash bars and custom foot mounts and everything. So next episode, we'll either be messing with this, trying to get this to work for us, or we might be templating our engine crash bars and skid plate so that we don't destroy it when it goes down the first time. That's my real big concern, because this bike is not designed to go down in rocky areas. So we're gonna have to pay special attention to that. But either way, thanks for being here, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this prototyping session. My name's Andrew. This is another Make It and Break It YouTube channel. If you like the video, hit like. If you dislike it, go ahead and dislike it and tell me why in the comments down below. If you have questions, concerns, are you worried that I didn't do enough analysis on these things? Are you worried they're gonna break? If you want to know what materials I'm planning on making out of, I can tell you in the comments down below. If you like what we're doing in the channel, we've got builds like this using 3D printing and welding, and we're going to take this thing off-roading here soon, hopefully. We've got our RX-8 race car build, and hopefully a really cool one here coming soon that's kind of going to tandem up with this one. So if any of that stuff sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below, ding the bell icon so you get notified when we put out a new video. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, my name's Andrew, and I'll catch you later.